He disappeared after the scandal. But the music? It never stopped. Each note he writes is a confession. And tonight, the world will hear the one song he swore he'd never play.
Love, guilt,
Memory. A symphony of scars. When silence turns into sound. Subscribe for more unforgettable K-drama stories and twists. A Symphony of Scars. They said silence heals. They lied. Silence only teaches you how to bleed without sound. After the lights of the scandal dimmed, the man everyone once adored disappeared from the world stage. No farewell, no announcement. Just absence. Like a note cut too early in a song that was meant to last forever. For months the city buzzed with theories. Some said he'd left the country. Others swore they'd seen him wandering through the rain with a notebook pressed to his chest. No one knew that behind a shuttered rehearsal hall on the edge of the city, he was hiding in plain sight. The old studio smelled of varnish and ghosts. A single piano sat in the center, its keys yellowed like aging bones. He touched them the way a man touches a wound that has finally stopped bleeding, carefully, almost reverently. Each key he pressed unlocked a memory. Her laughter in the corridor. The way the morning light used to spill across her script pages. The tremor in her voice when she said goodbye. He had spent his fame speaking words others wrote for him. Now he wanted to speak in a language no one could censor. Music. He began writing again, not lines, but notes. Every melody was a confession. Every rest, a pause to breathe through the pain. He called the piece the Symphony of Scars. Days melted into nights. He forgot to eat, to sleep, to live outside the rhythm. His neighbors heard faint fragments through the walls, soft, broken, and beautiful. They said the music sounded like someone learning to forgive himself. But he wasn't forgiving. He was remembering. The first movement began with a whisper of strings, a fragile pattern of regret. The second was darker, storm percussion pounding like a heart refusing to die. In the third, he placed the sound of her voice. Not a recording, but the memory of it, recreated with a single violin sliding just out of tune. And then came the fourth movement, the hardest one, the one he almost couldn't finish. He wrote it at dawn, after dreaming of her standing beneath a street lamp, face half in shadow, asking the question that ruined him. If the world forgets us, will you still remember? He woke trembling and pressed his palms to the piano. Yes, he whispered. And the fourth movement was born, a hymn to promises that refused to die. Weeks later, he sent the sheet music to no one. He hid it inside an unmarked envelope and left it at the doorstep of a small independent orchestra. No signature. No instructions. Just the title scrawled across the cover. Play it once. When the conductor unfolded the pages, he knew it wasn't ordinary. The notation looked alive, like veins across a heartbeat. He gathered his players in secret. They rehearsed at midnight, afraid the sound might wake something sacred. The night of the performance came unannounced. No posters. No tickets. Only an audience of 50 people who received mysterious invitations written in violet ink. The stage was dim. A single spotlight waited. The orchestra began to play. The first notes were soft, trembling, unsure. Then the rhythm grew bold, pain swelling into beauty. People in the crowd leaned forward, breathless. They didn't know whose story they were hearing, but every listener felt it carving through their chest. Halfway through, the conductor stopped. A figure walked onto the stage, tall, familiar, eyes like twilight. Gasps filled the hall. The man everyone thought had vanished sat at the piano and began to play the final movement himself. No words. No announcement. Only music. Every strike of the keys sounded like a confession shouted into heaven. Every pause felt like a heartbeat shared with ghosts. And when he reached the final chord, he didn't raise his hands right away. He let it linger, like her name still hanging in the air. The audience stood in silence. Some cried. Others simply stared. When the lights dimmed, he was already gone, leaving only the music behind. The next morning, recordings of the performance flooded the internet. No captions, no explanations. Just a file titled The Symphony of Scars. It spread faster than any rumor ever had. Critics called it a masterpiece born from pain. Fans said it sounded like forgiveness, wearing a disguise. But the man who wrote it knew the truth. It was neither. It was memory finding its final form. He retreated again, this time deeper into anonymity. The piano room became his universe. He filled its walls with fragments of the score, scribbled bars, unfinished melodies, echoes of voices that never left him. One day, while revising a passage, he noticed something he hadn't written, a tiny sketch in the corner of the sheet. A violet flower, drawn in delicate pencil strokes. He froze. Only one person ever drew violets that way. He searched the empty room, the shadows between the curtains, but no one was there. Still, a faint scent lingered in the air, soft, floral, impossible. He smiled. Not sadness this time. Something else.
Hope.
He finished the piece and tucked the final score inside a wooden box. On the lid, he carved a single line, "For the one the world forgot." Then he placed it under the piano lid, where light never reached. Years passed.
Seasons changed.
New artists rose and fell. Yet every winter, the same rumor returned. Somewhere, late at night, a melody drifts through the city like fog, haunting, gentle, and strangely familiar. Those who hear it say it feels like love learning how to breathe again. And in a small alley cafe near the harbor, an old upright piano stands by the window. Sometimes, when rain taps against the glass, its keys move on their own. One note, then another, building the opening of the Symphony of Scars. No one knows who keeps the piano tuned. No one knows who leaves the violet flower on its lid. But if you listen long enough, you might hear a whisper between the chords. Some songs never end. Epilogue. They asked him once, years later, what he'd learned from disappearing. He said, "That silence doesn't erase you. It just makes the world listen harder." Then he smiled, the kind of smile that carries both mourning and mercy, and walked into the rain, where echoes of his own music followed like ghosts refusing to rest. And perhaps that's what art truly is, not the applause, not the fame, but the courage to turn scars into symphonies and call it love. It stays within the same poetic rhythm and cinematic mood, expanding only what happened after the night of the secret performance. All characters remain fictional. Echoes after the last note. The night the symphony ended, the city didn't sleep. People replayed the performance until dawn, chasing the meaning inside the final chord. Some said the melody sounded unfinished. Others swore they could hear a woman's voice hidden beneath the violins. Only he knew the truth. There was a second half, still unwritten. He walked home through rain thick as silk, the streets trembling with neon reflections. Every puddle caught his face and broke it apart like glass. The applause still lived inside his ears, but applause was never the sound he wanted. He wanted her answer. Would she have forgiven him for surviving without her? At his door, the wind delivered a letter. No return name, only violet ink bleeding across the envelope. For the composer, who remembered. Inside lay a single sheet of music, for measures, perfectly drawn. It matched the rhythm of her laughter. He knew instantly. Someone else had heard the symphony, and she had written back through notes instead of words. He turned on every light in the studio. Dust floated like ghosts above the piano. He placed the new measures at the end of his score, sat down, and began to play. The melody shifted, alive again, as though two souls were speaking through the same instrument. For the first time in years, he smiled while he played. Outside, dawn broke like a secret forgiven. The city woke to a rumor. The mysterious composer had been seen again, wandering near the harbor with a music box in his hand. No one knew that the box contained a recording of the new passage, her reply. He began visiting the cafe where the old piano stood, the same one where violet flowers appeared each winter. Sometimes he played quietly before the crowd arrived. Other times he just sat, listening to the piano hum in its sleep, waiting for another letter that might never come. Weeks turned to months. The world moved on, but his evenings became a ritual. Piano at twilight, candlelight flickering against unfinished bars of music. He called the growing peace the return. Then one night the air changed. A woman entered the cafe, face hidden beneath a hat, rainwater tracing her silhouette. She didn't speak. She just walked to the piano, touched one key, E minor, and looked at him. The sound sliced through the room like recognition. She sat beside him without a word. Two hands on the same keyboard, two ghosts learning how to breathe again. They played together, hesitant, broken, beautiful. People outside stopped to watch through the window, unaware they were witnessing the moment a memory forgave itself. When the last note faded, she finally whispered, "You finished it." He shook his head. "You did." Then she was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of violets and a folded page on the piano. On it, only 3 words, "Play it tomorrow." The next day he returned at dawn. The cafe was empty, the city still half asleep. He unfolded the page and found a complete score, her handwriting weaving with his, every line merging into harmony. The title read, "The Answer." He played. The melody was sunlight through fog, soft, forgiving, impossibly alive. Outside, the rain stopped as though the world were listening. People gathered at the window again. No posters, no cameras, just silence and music healing itself. By the final chord, tears had already blurred the keys. He looked at the space beside him. The seat was empty, but in the reflection of the piano lid, he saw her smile. Faint, peaceful, free. He closed the lid and whispered, "Some songs never end, they just change hands." That night, he left the cafe unlocked. Anyone could enter, touch the piano, and find a violet resting on the keys. Inside its petals hid a message etched in delicate ink. "If you ever loved something enough to lose it, play." And so strangers began to come. Students, travelers, lovers, all sat where he once did, playing fragments of the Symphony of Scars. Each performance added a new layer, each heartbeat another instrument. The music no longer belonged to him or her. It belonged to anyone who'd ever been erased and remembered anyway. Some say he still visits in disguise, tuning the strings, leaving new flowers. Others swear they hear 2 voices, singing faintly whenever the piano breathes. No one can prove it, but when the cafe lights dim and the last customer leaves, a soft duet rises through the night. A man and a woman finishing the song they began years ago. And somewhere, between the echo and the silence, love hums its favorite refrain. Play it once more for those who never stopped listening.